Hey, Chanel here with another Sew Bit. Today we're going to talk about ease stitch. It's so easy. An ease stitch is when you basically take your fabric and ease it into a shape. They use it on princess seams, which are the seams that will come down from a shoulder or a bust, and there's usually, because of the bust part, there's a curve and then it gets stitched into a straighter part. So you take that curved part of the fabric and you ease it into the straighter part of the fabric. What I want to show you today is how you take a sleeve cap, which has, look at all the curves in there. You're going to actually ease this into the arm's eye of a blouse, and you want to make it, you're going to ease this into a cap. You're going to make it into a cap, like there's a sleeve cap to it. So this part is called your sleeve cap, and you want it to curl and cup in. And how this instructions shows you how to do it, it says, it's actually step 11 right here, and it just says ease stitch top of sleeve between notches, stitch underarm seam. So I looked on the instructions on 10, actually found them right here. This is the same instructions, step 10, and it's a collar. So it didn't even show anything of the sleeve. It just put it in there, e-stitch the sleeve. So I was a little surprised with that. It just didn't show you how to sew the side seams or the seams or anything. So that's when it says easy. It doesn't necessarily mean learn to sew, because they left out those kind of steps. Also, you can always look to the front of instructions. A lot of them will show you, they'll have a key on what things mean, and then you can kind of investigate it and see what it means. So anyway, so this ease stitch right here, it's showing basically how there's two ways to do it. So there's basically the sewing two lines right real close next to each other on the longest stitch. It's called also the basting stitch. I put that in one of my sew bits. Two lines next to each other within the 5/8 inch seam allowance. So this last line here might be at 1/2 inch, and then this one's up at like 3/8. So and you want it within the seam allowance, otherwise it pokes out past if you sew directly on your 5/8, which you're supposed to. And then you're going to take the two basting, the two threads, and I like to take the bobbin thread, which is the one on the bobbin. I actually made it into light blue here. You'll take, they tend to sew a little bit looser, so they're easier to pull. So you just take those two threads and then you pull them together like this, and then you get the gathering like that. So that's how you make gathering, and you gathered skirts and ruffles and stuff. You just pull these two threads and it kind of puckers up, and then you end up with a nice little cap like this. You see how it makes it kind of cap over like that. When it says, there's some sleeves that are gathered and you gather them in and they have puckers. This is a sleeve right here, if you notice, there's no gathers up here. You don't see the puckers, so that's why it's an E-stitch. You want to just barely pull those, and it's just slightly a cap like that. So it just kind of just slightly brings that fabric in like that. It's kind of hard to explain here. So that's one way of doing it. That's the way they showed to do it. There's another way, actually they never show it in the instructions because it's kind of hard to put it on paper. So I'm going to show you that on the machine. Okay, here is my favorite way to E-stitch, and it's on the machine. I'm going to put the stitch on kind of like on a shorter stitch, maybe 2.5, and I'm going to be sewing on the wrong side is up right here, because this is my right side of my fabric, and I'm going to be, because what I want it to do is the goal is to make this sleeve cap cup over, and I'm going to start out, I got back notch, shoulder notch up here. By the way, when you're doing your sleeves, always have a shoulder notch. You always got to know where that center is. And then the front notch. So I'm going to start kind of just a little bit past the notch there, and then I'm going to be putting my finger back, holding onto this presser foot. Hopefully you can see that. It's a little dangerous because right here you want to make sure this doesn't come down and hit you, because it comes down and goes back up. It's a little dangerous. So I've got my hand back here, and what I'm going to do is just hit the gas. I'm going to be pressing on this presser foot and letting this fabric bunch up. So I'm just pressing and letting the fabric totally bunch up. I think I'm going to put it on 3 right there, a little bit faster. I'm only sewing about 1/4 to 3/8 inch in too, by the way. And when I get to my halfway mark, which is the shoulder notch, I'm going to let it go. And then I'm going to grab, and then I'm going to kind of, so you don't want to have too much fabric bunched up. I'm going to press it again, and I'm going to go to the next notch here. I had to let it go again, it's getting too bunched up. There, and I went to almost the next notch. I'm going to cut it off here, and I should have a nice little cupped cap right there. So that's how that works. It just gently, you also don't want to pull this because it'll just come right out, but it tends to get just real finely gathers that in like that, and it has a nice little cap to it. Then you would just sew these seams together, and then you have a nice cap to go and put into your armscye. So one way to practice this too is to maybe just go on a straight grain of fabric right here, just like a straight piece, and then just practice it before you go putting it onto a rounded cap. So you go hold it back, let it go, see it cups it, do it like maybe, you know, halfway there. So what you're doing is the feed dogs are moving, you're holding the fabric back, you're pushing it back, and then it's just sewing the stitch, 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 and it's puckering up all the fabric, just little tiny increments. Like that. Take that out. This is a good way to practice it. So you can see now just a straight piece. It just kind of slightly puckered it, and then that would actually, if you were doing other things to kind of, you know, just kind of takes that woven fabric that has, you know, straight, crisp, and it just kind of puckers it so you can fit it into things. And you don't want to stretch it out either when you're working with it. You don't want to go press it, because then you have nothing. But that's another way of an E-stitch. So I'll see you in the next sew bit.